In every city, there are streets the streetlights forget. Places where the fog doesn't lift, it settles. Into the bones. Into the records. Into cases no one wants reopened. They told her it would be simple. Walk in. Walk out. Don't look back. But nothing in this world stays buried. And everyone looks back, eventually. Some crimes don't end when the sirens fade. They send out waves. Through testimony. Through memory. Through the people who survive them. They reverberate.
Help me.
This is one of those cases. This is reverberating noir.
Picture a village, stone walls, frozen fields. A Northumberland winter so deep and still you could hear the silence itself. It's the 3rd of January, 1826, and somewhere in a small stone cottage in the hamlet of Redesdale, an old man is spending the last hours of his life.
His name is Joseph Hedley.
He is 76 years old. He is alone, and by morning, he will be dead.
And 200 years later, we still don't know who killed him.
This is Coldfall. I'm Adam Jones.
And I'm Nina Jovovich. And today, we're going deep into one of Northumberland's oldest and most haunting unsolved murders. A case that drew the attention of the Crown itself, and still ended in silence.
Let's set the scene, because context matters here. Northumberland in the 1800s was a world unto itself. Remote valleys, scattered farming communities, people who lived and died within a few miles of where they were born. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and where secrets, if kept, stayed kept.
And Joseph Hedley was very much a man of that world. He was a master quilter, which sounds quaint, maybe, to modern ears. But this wasn't a hobby. This was a skilled trade, a profession. He made the heavy, durable, ornately patterned quilts that farming families across the region depended on. He was good at it. He was known for it.
By 1826, he was a widower, living alone in his stone cottage near the village of Wark. Quiet life, simple routine, and there was one thing about Joseph Hedley that the local community knew, or believed they knew. He had money hidden somewhere in that cottage.
Now, this is important. We don't know for certain that he actually had a hidden stash of savings. What we know is that people believed he did. He had a reputation for being frugal. He'd worked his whole life. He didn't trust banks. In tight-knit rural communities, that kind of reputation spreads. And once it spreads, it becomes dangerous.
Because it doesn't matter whether the money was real. What matters is that someone believed it was, and someone decided to go and take it. The 3rd of January, 1826. A Tuesday night. We don't know exactly what time it happened. We don't know if Hedley was asleep or awake. What we know is that someone entered his cottage, and what followed was described by those who later saw the aftermath as an attack of, quote, great ferocity.
The weapon is believed to have been a quilt press, a heavy piece of Hedley's own equipment. Think about that for a moment. The tool of his trade, the thing he'd spent his life working with, used against him.
He was struck repeatedly. The injuries were catastrophic. Joseph Hedley did not survive the night.
And the cottage was ransacked. Whoever did this wasn't just there to hurt him. They were searching, frantically, by the look of it. A small amount of money that Hedley was known to keep on hand was taken. But the larger hoard they were presumably looking for? Either it didn't exist, or they never found it.
The body wasn't discovered until the following morning, Wednesday the 4th of January. Neighbours concerned by his absence forced their way into the locked cottage. What they found inside would stay with them for the rest of their lives.
Now, the response from the authorities was actually quite significant for the time. This wasn't brushed under the rug. Within 8 days of the murder, the Crown had stepped in.
8 days. January the 11th, 1826. A formal proclamation was issued, and the name attached to it carries weight even today.
Sir Robert Peel. At this point in history, he was serving as Secretary of State. This is the same man who, just a few years later, would found the Metropolitan Police, the father of modern policing. His office issued a pardon and reward in the name of the king.
£100 in 1826. That is a life-changing sum. We're talking about enough to sustain a working family for years. The message was clear. Come forward. Name the killer, and you will be rewarded beyond anything your current life is offering you.
And for anyone who was involved but wasn't the one who actually committed the murder, the offer was even more compelling. A full royal pardon. Your involvement erased by order of the king himself. That is an extraordinary offer.
And it was met with complete silence.
That silence is, honestly, one of the most revealing things about this entire case. Think about what it takes for an entire community to stay quiet, even with £100 on the table, even with a royal pardon. Either nobody genuinely knew anything, or somebody did, and chose not to speak.
And both of those possibilities are chilling in their own way.
Exactly. Because if nobody knew, that means the killer moved through that community invisibly. And if somebody knew and stayed quiet, that means the killer had something more powerful than £100. Fear, loyalty, or both.
So let's talk about the theories. Because there are a few. And they each tell a different story about what might have happened in that cottage.
The first, and the one most popular at the time, points to itinerant workers. Travelers. Vagrants passing through the valley. Hedley was known to be wary of strangers. He may have turned someone away, or word may have reached the wrong ears about the old quilter with money hidden in his walls.
Remote cottage. Elderly man living alone. A reputation for hidden savings. If you were a desperate person passing through, that's a target.
But here's the problem with that theory. Itinerant workers move on. They leave the area. If the killer was a stranger passing through, why did the reward produce nothing? Someone somewhere would have talked. Travelers talk. People in other towns talk. And yet, nothing.
Which brings us to the second theory. The local killer.
This one is harder to sit with, but it may be the most credible. Someone who knew the cottage, knew the layout, knew Hedley's routine, knew when he'd be alone and when it would be safe to move. The level of searching that took place inside that cottage suggests someone who had a specific idea of where to look. That's not random. That's informed.
And if the killer was local, the silence makes a different kind of sense. You don't turn in your neighbour, your cousin, your friend, not even for £100, not in a valley like that, not in 1826.
Before we go further, if this kind of deep dive true crime storytelling is what you're here for, take 5 seconds right now and hit subscribe. Every week, Adam and I bring you cases like this one. Cold, unsolved, and worth remembering. We'll be right back in the story.
There's a third theory, and in some ways, it's the most human. Maybe this wasn't planned as a murder at all. Maybe someone crept into that cottage in the dead of night expecting to find a sleeping old man and a hidden purse. And maybe Joseph Hedley woke up.
It's possible. Burglaries turn violent when something goes wrong. A witness, a confrontation, a moment of panic. But here's what troubles me about that explanation. The ferocity. The description of the attack isn't consistent with someone trying to silence a witness quickly and get out. It's consistent with something more sustained, more deliberate, more personal.
Which brings us back to the local theory, and to a question we can't answer. Did Joseph Hedley know the person who killed him?
We don't know. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes this case so enduring. There's no resolution to anchor to. No arrest, no trial, no confession. Just an old man, a ransacked cottage, and a valley that went quiet.
Joseph Hedley was buried in the churchyard of Street Michael and All Angels Church in Wark. His gravestone is still there. 200 years of Northumbrian winters have worn it down, but it's still standing, still marking the spot, still recording, for anyone who stops to read it, exactly how he died.
There's something that strikes me every time I work on a case like this. Joseph Hedley spent his life making things, careful, skilled, beautiful things. Quilts that kept families warm through winters exactly like the one that killed him. And what he's remembered for is a single night of violence.
That's the cruelty of it. A life reduced to its ending, a craftsman remembered as a victim, a name that survives only because of what was done to him.
The case was never solved. The reward went unclaimed. The royal pardon was never collected. And whoever entered that cottage on the night of the 3rd of January, 1826, walked back out into the dark and was never held to account.
200 years of silence. And somewhere in that silence, the answer still exists. It always does. We just haven't found it yet.
If this episode stayed with you, subscribe to Reverberating Nor. Every case we cover is chosen because it deserves to be remembered. Because behind every cold case, there's a person. And that person's story matters.
Joseph Hedley, Master Quilter, Northumberland, 1826, still waiting for an answer.
And so the file closes. But the case doesn't. Not for the families. Not for the witnesses who still pause before answering questions. Not for a city that remembers, even when it pretends not to. The evidence sits somewhere in a box. The photographs fade. The names are spoken less often. But the echoes remain. If this story stayed with you, if you felt that silence at the end of each unanswered question, subscribe to the channel. Not for us, for the stories that never got a second look, for the voices that were cut short, for the cases that refused to stay buried. Because the truth doesn't disappear. It waits.
And as long as the questions are still unanswered, the case isn't over. It's just waiting for someone to look again.
And here, it keeps reverberating.